A single penny hits a marble table. $80,000 in debt. One impossible choice. Tonight, a terrified waitress will do something no one at Manhattan's most feared restaurant has ever dared. She'll say no to the Viper. Stay with me until the end of this story. If it moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Nora's journey can travel. The first thing anyone learned at Celestine was simple. Never look Ethan Vale directly in the eye. Nora Bell had heard the stories during her 3-day training period. The billionaire in table 7 who sent back champagne because the bubbles were aggressive. The man who once made a sommelier cry over a wine pairing, then left a tip so massive the guy bought a car. The single father whose restaurant reviews could bankrupt establishments, whose business deals crushed competitors, whose presence in the dining room caused the entire kitchen to operate at terror-level efficiency. They called him the Viper. Not to his face, obviously. No one was that stupid. Nora's trainer, a rail-thin woman named Jessica, with bleached hair and nervous hands, had gripped her shoulders on day 2. Listen to me. If you get table 7, you smile. You're invisible. You don't speak unless spoken to, and you pray he's in a decent mood. Last month he got Rachel fired because she breathed too loud near his daughter. Breathed too loud? Well, she was having an anxiety attack, but still... Jessica's laugh was brittle. The point is, Ethan Vale doesn't see us as people. We're furniture that occasionally brings him food. Now on her first real shift, Nora stood in the break room staring at the server chart, her heart somewhere around her knees. There it was. Her name, written in Manuel's angry scrawl next to table 7. "You've got to be kidding me," she whispered. "Nope." Carlos, a waiter who'd been at Celestine for 5 years, patted her shoulder without looking up from his phone. "Manuel hates you already. Giving you Val on your first night is basically a hazing ritual. You'll either survive or you'll crack, and either way, it'll be entertaining." "That's not helpful." "Wasn't trying to be helpful. I was trying to be honest." Carlos finally glanced at her. Something in his expression softened. "Look, you seem nice. So here's actual advice. Be fast, be perfect, and if he says something awful, which he will, don't react. Don't argue, don't cry. Just take it, fix whatever he wants fixed, and get out of his sightline as quickly as possible." Nora's hands were already shaking. She pressed them flat against her black apron, feeling the slight bulge of her phone in the pocket. On that phone were 17 missed calls from debt collectors, 43 unread emails about payment plans, and one text from her younger sister asking if she could help with rent this month. $80,000. That's what her ex-boyfriend had left her with when he drained their joint account, maxed out the credit cards she'd stupidly co-signed for, and vanished to somewhere without extradition treaties. The lawyer had been clear. Legally, the debt was half his, but practically, since he was gone and she was still here, it was all hers. The job at Celestine paid better than anywhere else she'd applied. The tips alone could be $1,000 a week if she was lucky. If she worked double shifts, kept her head down, didn't screw up, she could maybe dig herself out in a few years. But first, she had to survive table 7. "He's here," Jessica hissed, rushing past with a tray of appetizers. "Just sat down. Alone tonight, no daughter. That's either very good or very, very bad." Nora forced herself to breathe. She'd waitressed before. Different restaurants, different cities, but the principle was the same. Food goes out, empty plates come back, smile through everything. She could do this. She checked her reflection in the break room mirror. Blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun, minimal makeup, white shirt pressed and spotless. She looked professional, competent, invisible, just like Jessica said. The dining room at Celestine was designed to intimidate. Soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, tables spaced far enough apart that conversation stayed private. The clientele wore watches that cost more than cars and treated the $100 appetizers like bar snacks. Old money, new money, foreign money. It all spent the same here, and it all expected perfection. Table 7 sat in this corner, slightly elevated, with a view of both the kitchen and the entrance. A power position. Nora had read enough about psychology to recognize the setup. Ethan Vale wanted to see everything, wanted everyone to see him, wanted to control the room without moving. He was reading something on his phone when she approached. Tall, dark hair cut precisely, wearing a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. He didn't look up. Nora stopped at the appropriate distance. Not too close. Not hovering. She counted to 5 in her head, giving him time to acknowledge her presence. Nothing. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. Her ankles started to ache. She'd been on her feet since the shift started 2 hours ago, running appetizers and drinks for the other tables. The dress shoes she'd bought at a discount store were already rubbing blisters on her heels. Finally, without lifting his eyes from the screen, Ethan Vale spoke. Water. Still. Not sparkling. Room temperature. No ice, no lemon, no garnish of any kind. Is that simple enough, or should I write it down? His voice was cold. Not angry, which somehow made it worse. Just utterly indifferent, like he was reading a grocery list. Of course, sir. Right away. Nora turned to leave. And when I say room temperature, I mean precisely that. Not cold with the ice removed. Not lukewarm. Not whatever temperature makes your job easier. Room temperature. She stopped. I understand, sir. Do you? Because the last server brought me water that was clearly refrigerated, insisted it was room temperature, and seemed genuinely confused when I explained that rooms are not typically kept at 42 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll make sure it's correct, sir. See that you do. Nora walked back to the service station, her cheeks burning. Carlos caught her expression and mouthed, Told you. Room temperature water. Fine, she could do that. Except the kitchen only had refrigerated water and ice water. Everything was kept cold for health code reasons. She found Manuel in the back screaming at a line cook about undercooked scallops. Manuel, quick question. Table 7 wants room temperature water. How do I Pour it and let it sit out for 20 minutes, Manuel snapped without looking at her. Or microwave it for 15 seconds. I don't care. Figure it out. 20 minutes. Ethan Vale didn't seem like a 20 minutes kind of man. Nora filled a glass with refrigerated water, then made a decision that felt insane even as she did it. She held it between her palms, warming it with her own body heat. 30 seconds. A minute. 2 minutes. She tested it with her finger. Not cold anymore, not warm, somewhere in between. It would have to do. She brought it back to table 7 on a small tray, moving carefully through the dining room. Ethan Vale was now reading a physical menu, though she suspected he already knew what he wanted. Men like him always did. Your water, sir. She placed it in front of him with steady hands, a small miracle considering her pulse was racing. He didn't touch it, didn't even look at it. I'll have the aged ribeye, medium rare with the seasonal vegetables. No potato. Bring the wine list. Of course, sir. Right away. Nora turned to leave again. The water? She froze. Sir? Ethan Vale picked up the glass, held it for a moment, then set it down. For the first time, he looked directly at her. His eyes were dark, completely unreadable. It's warm. You asked for room temperature, sir. Room temperature, not body temperature. He pushed the glass toward her. Try again. Nora's face went hot. I apologize, sir. I'll bring you a fresh glass immediately. Back at the service station, her hands were shaking again. Carlos appeared beside her. What happened? The water was too warm. Jesus, how is that even possible? I heated it up, Nora admitted miserably. I was trying to get it to room temperature. With what? A blowtorch? But Carlos's voice wasn't unkind. He pulled out a glass, filled it with refrigerated water, then just set it on the counter. Give it 10 minutes. It'll warm up enough. He won't know the difference. He knew the last difference. Yeah, well, he's a psychopath, but he's also human. His taste buds aren't actually thermometers. 10 minutes felt like an hour. Nora checked on her other tables, brought out appetizers, refilled wine glasses, all while watching that single glass of water sit on the counter, warming degree by degree. When she finally brought it back to table 7, Ethan Vale was on his phone again. She placed the glass down in silence and tried to retreat. Wait, she stopped. Yes, sir? He took a sip, a long, deliberate pause. Then he set it down. Acceptable. The wine list. Nora practically ran to get it. The wine list at Celestine was the size of a phone book and contained bottles that cost more than some people's monthly salaries. She brought it to him, placed it on the table, and stepped back. What do you recommend? Ethan asked, not looking up. It was a test. It had to be. Nora had completed the mandatory wine training, had memorized the basics, but she wasn't a sommelier. She wasn't even close. For the ribeye, sir? Perhaps the 2015 Chateau Margaux. It's bold enough to complement the meat without overpowering it. Ethan Vale finally looked up at her again. Really looked. His gaze moved from her face to her name tag and back again. Nora, that's your name? Yes, sir. How long have you worked here, Nora? The truth felt dangerous, but lying felt worse. This is my first week, sir. I see. He turned a page in the wine list. And in your first week of employment, you feel qualified to recommend a $700 bottle of wine. Her stomach dropped. I apologize, sir. I was only trying to help. I can get the sommelier. The 2015 Margaux is a safe choice. Predictable. The kind of thing someone reads in a training manual and regurgitates. He closed the wine list. I'll have the 2009 Pichon Baron. Decant it for 30 minutes. Of course, sir. Nora took the wine list, her cheeks burning again. She found Pierre, the head sommelier, and relayed the order. Pierre raised an eyebrow. Pichon Baron. Bold choice. That's an $850 bottle. He knows what he wants. They always do. Pierre disappeared into the wine cellar. The rest of the order went to the kitchen. Medium rare ribeye, seasonal vegetables, no potato. Chef Dominic, a mountain of a man with tattooed forearms, glanced at the ticket and grunted. Vale? Yes, chef. Tell him it'll be 20 minutes, and tell him if he sends it back, he can cook it himself. Dominic wouldn't actually say that to Ethan Vale's face, but the fantasy seemed to make him feel better. Nora returned to table 7. Chef Dominic says the ribeye will be ready in 20 minutes, sir. Your wine is being decanted now. Fine. She started to leave. Nora? She turned back. Yes, sir? Do you know why the Pichon Baron is a better choice than the Margaux? It was another test. She could feel the entire restaurant watching, even though rationally she knew no one cared about one conversation at one table. I'm not certain, sir. I'm still learning about wine. The Margaux is excellent, but it's too refined for what I want tonight. The Pichon Baron has more structure, more tannins. It won't get lost against the char on a properly cooked steak. He paused. You were close, though. Closer than most servers get on their first week. It wasn't quite a compliment, but it wasn't an insult either. Nora didn't know what to do with it. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Just bring the wine when it's ready, and make sure the steak is actually medium rare. Last time I was here, someone brought me a piece of leather and called it food. I'll make sure it's perfect, sir. The next 20 minutes were a blur. Nora checked on her other tables, brought out entrees, cleared plates, all while keeping one eye on table 7. Pierre finally emerged with the decanted wine, and together they brought it to Ethan Vale. The tasting ritual was excruciating. Pierre poured a small amount into Ethan's glass. Ethan swirled it, smelled it, tasted it, and considered. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Acceptable, he finally said. Pierre poured a full glass and retreated. Nora followed. Wait, Ethan said. Nora stopped. Pierre kept walking, the coward. Sir? What's your story, Nora? The question caught her completely off guard. My story, sir? Everyone has one, especially people who take jobs like this. He gestured vaguely at the dining room. What's yours? This felt like dangerous territory. Personal questions from billionaires didn't lead anywhere good, but refusing to answer seemed worse. I needed a job with good pay, Nora said carefully. Celestine has an excellent reputation. That's not a story. That's a job application answer. Ethan took a sip of wine. Debt? Nora's breath caught. Excuse me? You have debt, I can tell. Everyone who works here either has debt or ambition, and you don't carry yourself like someone with ambition. So, debt. How much? This was insane, completely inappropriate, but something in his tone wasn't mocking. It was clinical, like he was solving a puzzle. That's personal, sir. Everything's personal. Some people are just more honest about it. Another sip. Fine, don't tell me, but here's some free advice. Whatever you owe, working here won't clear it as fast as you think. The tips are good, but not that good. He dismissed her with a wave, turning back to his phone. Nora walked away, her mind spinning. How did he know? Was it that obvious? Did she look desperate? The kitchen bell rang. The ribeye was up. Nora carried it out on a heavy ceramic plate, the steak perfectly seared, vegetables arranged artfully on the side. It looked like something from a magazine. She placed it in front of Ethan Vale with both hands, careful not to let the plate tilt. "Your ribeye, sir. Medium rare." Ethan didn't respond. He cut into the steak, examining the interior. Pink, but not red. Warm in the center. Textbook medium rare. He took a bite, chewed, swallowed, set down his fork. "It's overcooked." Nora's heart stopped. "Sir, I can assure you Chef Dominic prepared it exactly to your specifications. I don't care what the chef thinks he prepared. I'm telling you what's on my plate." Ethan pushed the plate toward her. "Medium rare means a warm red center. This is pink throughout." "That's medium. Take it back." "Sir, if I could just— Are you arguing with me?" His voice hadn't gotten louder, but something in it made Nora take a step back. The restaurant suddenly felt very quiet. "No, sir. I'll take it back to the kitchen immediately." She picked up the plate, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. The walk back to the kitchen felt like a funeral march. Chef Dominic took one look at her face and the returned plate and exploded. "He said it's overcooked?" "He says it's medium, not medium rare." Dominic grabbed the plate, cut into the steak himself, and stared at the interior. "This is perfect. This is exactly medium rare. What the hell does he want? Raw meat?" "Chef, I'm just telling you what he said." "Yeah, and I'm telling you he's full of it." But Dominic was already firing up another steak, slamming it onto the grill with enough force to make the other cooks flinch. "You know what? Fine. He wants rare? I'll give him rare. Let's see him complain when it's still mooing. Chef Dominic, please, don't please me. I've been cooking for 25 years and I know what medium rare looks like. This is personal. He's testing you." Nora stood there helpless, while Dominic cooked another steak with angry precision. Rare this time. Truly rare. Seared on the outside, red and cool in the center. "Take this to the Viper," Dominic said, shoving the plate at her. "And if he sends this one back, I quit." Nora carried the second steak out to table 7, her entire body tense. She placed it in front of Ethan Vale without a word. He cut into it, examined it, took a bite. "Better," he said. "Still not perfect, but better." He didn't send it back. Nora stood there, waiting for further instructions, but Ethan had already dismissed her from his attention. He ate in silence, occasionally checking his phone, completely alone in a restaurant full of people. The rest of the meal passed without incident. Nora brought him the dessert menu, which he waved away. She brought the check in a leather folder, which he handed back with a black credit card without looking at the total. When she returned with the receipt for him to sign, Ethan Vale was putting on his coat, preparing to leave. He signed quickly, closed the folder, and stood. "Good night, Nora." "Good night, sir. Thank you for dining with us." He walked away without another word. Nora waited until he was completely out of sight before opening the folder to see the tip. 1 penny. A single copper penny sat in the middle of the receipt, next to a signature that probably cost more to execute in lost time than the penny was worth. Her vision blurred. She picked up the penny with numb fingers staring at it. The total bill had been over $1,200. Standard tip would have been $200, maybe $250. She'd been expecting, hoping for, at least that much. 1 cent. "Oh, honey." Jessica appeared beside her, seeing the receipt. "He did that to Rachel too right before she got fired. It's his signature move. Finds someone new, breaks them in, leaves a penny to let them know they're worthless." "I did everything he asked," Nora whispered. "I got the water right the second time. I decanted the wine. I brought back the steak. So it doesn't matter. You're not supposed to win. You're supposed to fail so he can feel powerful." Jessica squeezed her shoulder. "Look, finish your shift, go home, and come back tomorrow. Don't let him get in your head." But he was already in her head. Nora finished the shift on autopilot, served her other tables, cleaned up, did her closing duties. The other servers had made decent money that night. Carlos pulled in $300 in tips. Jessica got $450. Nora's total, including the penny, was $87. Not enough. Nowhere near enough. In the break room, she sat on the bench and put her head in her hands. The phone buzzed in her pocket. Another debt collector. She silenced it. "Hey." Carlos sat down beside her. "For what it's worth, you handled that better than most people do on their first Vale encounter. Rachel cried in the bathroom for an hour." "I feel like crying in the bathroom for an hour." Yeah, but you didn't. That counts for something. He paused. You coming back tomorrow? Nora thought about the $80,000, the payment plans, her sister's rent, the electricity bill she'd been dodging. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Yeah, she said quietly. I'm coming back. Atta girl. And look, maybe he won't be here tomorrow. He usually only comes in twice a week. You might get lucky. But Nora didn't feel lucky. She felt like she'd just survived the first round of something much worse, and the real fight hadn't even started yet. She took the subway home to her studio apartment in Queens, her feet screaming in the cheap shoes, the pennies still in her pocket. At a bodega on the corner, she bought instant ramen and a bottle of water with the last of her cash. Dinner for 75 cents. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning. Unmade bed, clothes piled on a chair, bills scattered across the tiny table that served as both desk and dining surface. She'd been living here for 2 months, ever since leaving her old place, the place she'd shared with him before everything fell apart. Nora sat on the bed and finally let herself cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just quiet tears that slid down her cheeks while she stared at the wall and wondered how she'd ended up here. 30 years old, broke, humiliated by a stranger over water temperature and steak doneness, holding a penny like it meant something. The worst part was that it did mean something. It meant Ethan Vale had looked at her, assessed her, and decided she was worth exactly 1 cent. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her sister Emma. Hey stranger, you alive? Barely. Nora wiped her eyes. What's up? Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a few days. How's the new job? It's... Nora looked at the penny sitting on the table next to the unpaid bills. It's fine, still learning. You sound tired. Long shift. Well, don't work too hard, and hey, about next month's rent, don't worry about it. I picked up some extra hours at the hospital. I can cover it. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. Emma was a nurse, working doubles at a hospital in Brooklyn, barely scraping by herself. The fact that she was offering to help meant she'd probably skip meals to make it work. Emma, no, I'll figure something out. Nora, let me help, please. You've been carrying everything alone for too long. They talked for a few more minutes, careful chatter about nothing important, before Emma had to go. After they hung up, Nora sat in the silence of her apartment and made a decision. She would go back to Celestine tomorrow. She would serve table 7 if Ethan Vale showed up again. She would smile and be invisible and take whatever he threw at her because she didn't have a choice. But she wouldn't break. That penny was supposed to break her, supposed to make her quit, supposed to prove she wasn't strong enough for this. She picked it up, held it to the light. Lincoln's profile stared back at her, worn and dull from years of circulation. Well played, Mr. Vale, she whispered to the empty room. But I'm still here. She put the penny in a jar on the shelf next to the few dollars in change she'd been saving. It wasn't much. It would never be much. But it was something. Tomorrow she'd do it again. And the day after that. And the day after that. Because $80,000 didn't pay itself. And pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Nora set her alarm for 5 a.m., turned off the lights, and tried to sleep. In the darkness, she could still see Ethan Vale's cold, unreadable eyes, still hear his dismissive voice, still feel the weight of that penny in her palm. She wondered what his daughter was like, if she was kind or if she'd inherited her father's cruelty, if Ethan Vale was capable of warmth with anyone, or if the ice went all the way through. It didn't matter. He was table 7, she was just a waitress, and their worlds would never actually touch. She fell asleep believing that, and woke up the next morning to find out how wrong she was. The morning came too early, dragging Nora from a restless sleep filled with water glasses and cold voices. Her alarm screamed at 5 a.m., and she slapped it silent, staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment. Every muscle ached. The blisters on her heels had opened during the night, leaving small spots of blood on her sheets. She showered, dressed, forced down coffee that tasted like battery acid, and checked her phone. 3 new emails from creditors. 1 text from Emma asking if she was okay. Another missed call from a number she didn't recognize, probably another collections agency that had bought her debt. The penny sat in the jar on her shelf, catching the weak morning light. Nora grabbed her bag and left. The subway was packed with the early shift workers, people who looked as tired as she felt. A man in a suit slept standing up, swaying with the motion of the train. A woman with two small children juggled grocery bags and tried to keep them quiet. Normal people, living normal lives, carrying normal burdens. She wondered if any of them owed $80,000 to ghosts and mistakes. At Celestine, the morning prep was already underway. Nora arrived at 6:30 to find Chef Dominic screaming about fennel, Carlos polishing wine glasses with manic precision, and Jessica counting silverware with the concentration of someone defusing a bomb. "You came back," Jessica said when she spotted Nora. "I honestly wasn't sure you would." "Couldn't afford not to." "Yeah, that's the trap, isn't it?" Jessica handed her a stack of folded napkins. "Manuel wants these on tables 2 through 9, and hey, good news! Vale usually doesn't come in 2 nights in a row. You're probably safe today." Probably. The word hung in the air like smoke. The lunch shift started at 11. Nora took her section, tables 1 through 6, and settled into the rhythm. An older couple celebrating an anniversary. A business lunch with 4 men in identical suits talking about market shares. A woman dining alone, working on a laptop between courses. Normal tables, normal people, normal tips. By 3 p.m., Nora had made $140. Not great, but respectable. Her feet hurt less today. She'd bought bandages for the blisters, patted the worst spots. Small victories. She was clearing table 4 when Manuel appeared beside her, his face unreadable. Table 7 just sat down. Nora's hands froze on the dirty plates. "What?" "You heard me. Vale's here, and he asked for you specifically." The plates rattled. Nora steadied them. "He asked for me by name? Apparently you made an impression." Manuel's smile was thin and sharp. "Don't screw this up. He's not just any customer. His family has invested in 3 other restaurants in this building. If he's unhappy, we all suffer." "No pressure, then." "Exactly." Manuel walked away. Nora brought the dirty plates to the kitchen, her mind racing. Why would Ethan Vale ask for her? He'd left a penny. That was supposed to be the end of it. A clear message that she'd failed whatever test he'd been administering. People like him didn't come back for encores. Unless the first night hadn't been enough. Unless he wanted to twist the knife a little deeper. Carlos caught her in the hallway. "I heard. You okay?" "Do I have a choice?" "Not really." He squeezed her shoulder. "But look, if he pulls the same thing again, just remember it's not personal. It's a game to him. Rich people get bored and we're the entertainment." Nora wanted to argue, to say that cruelty was always personal, that dismissing someone's worth with a penny was as personal as it got. But arguing wouldn't change anything. She checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror, fixed her hair, put on her best smile, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes but looked convincing enough from a distance, and walked into the dining room. Table 7. Ethan Vale sat in the same position as yesterday, phone in hand, expensive suit perfectly tailored. But today there was something different. A leather briefcase beside his chair, papers spread on the table. He looked like he was working, which seemed insane. Who worked at a 5-star restaurant? Billionaires, apparently. They did whatever they wanted. Nora approached at the proper distance and waited. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. "Good afternoon, Mr. Vale." He looked up. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition that went deeper than just remembering her face. Then it was gone, replaced by the same cold indifference. "Nora, you're still here." "Yes, sir." "I'm surprised. Most people quit after the penny." So it had been intentional. Not just cruelty, but calculated cruelty. Designed to break her. Nora felt her jaw tighten, but kept her voice steady. "I don't quit easily, sir." Clearly, Ethan closed whatever he'd been reading on his phone and gave her his full attention. It felt like standing under a spotlight. "I'll have the carbonara, and before you ask, I want it prepared exactly as the chef intended. No modifications. I trust Dominic knows what he's doing with pasta." It was the first time Nora had heard him express trust in anything. "Of course, sir. And to drink?" "Water, still, room temperature." A pause. "I trust you remember how I like it." There was something in his tone, not quite mockery, but close, testing her again. "I do, sir." "Good. Bring the water first. I'll look at the wine list while I wait." Nora went to the service station, her hands steadier than yesterday. She filled a glass with refrigerated water and set it on the counter, checking her watch. 10 minutes. That's what Carlos had said. 10 minutes to reach room temperature. But Ethan Vale was watching her. She could feel his eyes across the dining room, tracking her movements. 10 minutes would feel like an admission of weakness, like she needed extra time to get something simple right. 8 minutes. That would have to do. She brought the water to table 7 at exactly 8 minutes, placing it in front of him without comment. Ethan picked it up, took a sip, and set it down. Better, not perfect, just better. But he didn't send it back, which felt like winning a war. The carbonara order went to the kitchen. Dominic saw it and grunted. Vale again? What's he doing moving in? Apparently. Well, at least he ordered something I can't screw up. Carbonara is chemistry. Either it works or it doesn't. Dominic started pulling ingredients. Tell him 15 minutes. He says no modifications, exactly as you'd make it. That made Dominic pause. Really? He trusts me? His words. Huh. Dominic looked almost pleased. Maybe the Viper has some sense after all. Nora brought the wine list to table 7, but Ethan waved it away. Just water today. I have meetings this afternoon. Of course, sir. She turned to leave. Nora. She stopped. Yes, sir? Sit down. The request was so unexpected that Nora almost didn't process it. Sir? Sit, just for a moment. Ethan gestured to the chair across from him. I want to ask you something. This violated every rule she'd been taught. Servers didn't sit with customers. Ever. It was unprofessional, overly familiar, the kind of thing that got people fired, but refusing a direct request from Ethan Vale seemed more dangerous than breaking protocol. Nora sat, perching on the edge of the chair, ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. Ethan studied her with those unreadable dark eyes. Why did you come back? I need the job, sir. You need a job. Not necessarily this one. There are other restaurants, easier ones, where the customers aren't testing you over water temperature. Nora chose her words carefully. Celestine pays better than other places. The tips are worth the difficulty. Even after I left you a penny? Even then. That's either very brave or very desperate. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Which is it? Does it matter? To me? No, but I'm curious. He paused. You have debt. I was right about that, wasn't I? Nora felt her face flush. That's not relevant to my job performance, sir. Everything's relevant. Debt makes people predictable. They'll tolerate things they shouldn't, accept things they wouldn't otherwise, all because they need the money. Ethan's voice was clinical, like he was discussing a business transaction. So how much? I'm not going to tell you that. 80,000? 100? More? Nora stood up. Is there anything else you need, sir? Your carbonara will be ready in a few minutes. Ethan didn't try to stop her from leaving, but she felt his eyes on her back all the way to the kitchen. What the hell was that? Why was he asking about her debt? Was he planning to use it against her somehow? Find new ways to humiliate her? You okay? Carlos asked, seeing her expression. You look like you saw a ghost. He made me sit down. What? Vale. He told me to sit at his table and asked about my debt. Carlos's eyes widened. That's weird. Even for him. What did you tell him? Nothing. I left. Good. Don't give him ammunition. These people, they collect information like weapons. The more he knows about you, the more control he has. The carbonara came up. Perfect golden pasta, eggs and cheese creating a creamy sauce without being heavy, pancetta crispy on top. Dominic had outdone himself. Nora brought it to table 7, placing it in front of Ethan without a word. He looked at it, then at her. You didn't answer my question. You didn't ask a question, sir. You made assumptions. Fair enough? Ethan picked up his fork. Let me ask one now. If I offered to pay off your debt, what would you do? Nora's breath caught. Excuse me? Your debt, whatever it is. If I wrote you a check right now, cleared it all, what would you do? This was a trap. It had to be. Men like Ethan Vale didn't offer money without strings attached, without expecting something in return. I would decline, sir. Why? Because I don't know what you'd want in exchange, and I'm not interested in finding out. For the first time since she'd met him, Ethan Vale smiled. It was a small, brief thing, gone almost before it appeared, but it was real. Smart answer, he said quietly. Smarter than most people would give. He started eating the carbonara, and Nora took that as her dismissal. She walked away, her heart pounding, her mind spinning with questions she couldn't answer. The rest of the meal passed in strange silence. Ethan ate, worked on his papers, occasionally checked his phone. Normal behavior if you ignored the bizarre conversation they'd just had. When he finished, Nora cleared the plate. Can I get you anything else, sir? Dessert? Coffee? No, just the check. She brought it in the leather folder, set it down, and retreated to a professional distance. Ethan signed the receipt without looking at the total, closed the folder, and stood to leave. But before he walked away, he paused. Nora, a word of advice. Sir? Whatever got you into that debt, whoever put you there, stop protecting them. Stop taking responsibility for someone else's mistakes. It's making you vulnerable. He left before she could respond. The folder sat on the table. Nora approached it slowly, afraid to look, afraid of what she'd find. Another penny? Another message that she wasn't worth anything? She opened it. $500. $500 in crisp bills folded neatly beside the signed receipt, and a handwritten note on Celestine's stationery. For the water. EV. Nora's hands shook as she picked up the money. This was more than she'd made in tips all week. This was groceries and electricity and a payment on her smallest credit card. This was breathing room. But why? Holy hell, Jessica whispered, appearing beside her. Did he actually? I don't know what this is, Nora said quietly, but it doesn't feel right. It's $500. Right or wrong doesn't matter. Take it. But it did matter. Nothing in Nora's life had ever been simple, and she knew better than to trust sudden kindness from cruel men. There was always a price. Always. She put the money in her apron anyway because she needed it too badly to refuse on principle alone. The rest of the shift blurred together. Nora served tables, smiled at customers, went through the motions while her mind stayed stuck on table 7 and the man who'd just tipped her more money than some people made in a week. At the end of the night, Carlos cornered her in the break room. Okay, what happened? You've been weird since Vale left. Nora showed him the $500. Jesus Christ, Carlos breathed. I don't even know what that is. Guilt? Payment? Some kind of power play? I think it's a test. Everything's a test with that guy. Carlos sat down heavily. Look, I know you need the money. We all do. But be careful. Men like Vale, they don't do anything without a reason. And the reason is never just kindness. Nora knew he was right, but knowing didn't change the fact that she had $500 in her pocket and bills that wouldn't pay themselves. She went home that night on the subway, clutching her bag close, hyper-aware of every person around her. The money felt heavy, dangerous, like carrying a live grenade. In her apartment, she counted it out on the bed. 5 crisp $100 bills. She photographed them, almost not believing they were real, then put $400 in an envelope for her landlord and kept $100 for food and emergencies. The penny was still in the jar on the shelf. She looked at it, then at the empty space where the $500 had been. 1 cent to $500 in 24 hours. The math didn't make sense. The psychology didn't make sense. Ethan Vale didn't make sense. Her phone buzzed. Emma checking in again. Hey, you sound better today. Good shift? Nora looked at the money. Yeah, better than yesterday. They talked about nothing important. Emma's difficult patients, a movie she wanted to see, their mother's upcoming birthday. Normal sister conversation. Safe. After they hung up, Nora sat in the quiet and tried to understand what was happening. Ethan Vale had humiliated her, tested her, left her a penny to show her worth. Then he'd come back, asked invasive questions about her debt, and left her enough money to survive another month. Why? She fell asleep without answers and woke up to her alarm with the same questions still circling. 3 days passed. Nora worked her shifts, served her tables, avoided thinking too hard about table 7. Ethan Vale didn't return. The restaurant operated normally, demanding customers, exhausting hours, decent tips. Life at Celestine without the Viper was almost manageable. On the 4th day, Manuel pulled her aside before the dinner shift. Table 7, reserved for tonight, 7 p.m. Nora's stomach dropped. Vale? Who else? Manuel's expression was unreadable. He specifically requested you again. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. He's been coming in more often since you started. That's not a good thing. That's a profitable thing. His average check is over $1,000, and he brings business associates. Last night at table 7 was empty, and we lost money. Manuel walked away. Be ready at 7. Carlos found her in the break room. I heard. You okay? I don't know what he wants from me. Maybe nothing. Maybe he's just bored and you're the new entertainment. Carlos paused. Or maybe he actually likes you. Likes me? He left me a penny, and then he left you $500. That's not nothing. It's not like that, Nora said quickly. He's married, right? Or at least widower. Wife died in childbirth 6 years ago. He's been alone ever since, except for the daughter. Carlos lowered his voice. Look, I'm not saying he's hitting on you. Rich people don't hit on waitresses, but maybe you remind him of something or someone, and he's working through whatever that is. At my expense. Probably, but $500 is pretty good compensation. 7 p.m. arrived too fast. Nora checked her reflection, smoothed her apron, and walked into the dining room with her shoulders back and her best smile fixed in place. Table 7 wasn't alone this time. Ethan Vale sat in his usual spot, but across from him was a little girl. 6 or 7 years old, dark hair and careful braids, wearing a blue dress that probably cost more than Nora's monthly rent. She had a coloring book open in front of her and was working on it with intense concentration. This was his daughter, the child he was raising alone, the reason behind the cruelty, according to the rumors. Nora approached carefully. Good evening, Mr. Vale. Ethan looked up. Nora, this is my daughter, Lily. Lily, this is Miss Nora. She's going to take care of us tonight. The little girl looked up from her coloring book. Hi, Miss Nora. Do you like horses? The question was so unexpected, so purely childlike, that Nora felt something in her chest crack open. I do. Do you? I love them. I'm coloring this one purple because regular horses are boring. Lily held up the book to show a horse that was indeed purple, with rainbow spots. Daddy says I can have a real horse when I'm older, but I want a purple one, and he says those don't exist. They exist in pictures, Nora said gently, and pictures are important. Lily beamed. That's what I said. Ethan was watching this exchange with an expression Nora couldn't read. Not cold exactly. Something else. Something almost soft. What would you like to drink tonight? Nora asked, pulling out her notepad. Lily will have apple juice, no ice. I'll have the usual water. Room temperature, Nora confirmed. You remember. I remember. When she brought the drinks back, apple juice for Lily, perfectly room temperature water for Ethan, the little girl was telling her father an elaborate story about her day at school involving a boy named Marcus who had brought a frog to class. And then it jumped on Ms. Peterson's desk and she screamed, Daddy! She screamed so loud, and Marcus said it was an accident, but everyone knows he did it on purpose because Ms. Peterson gave him a bad grade on spelling. That's quite a story, Ethan said. But he was smiling, actually smiling. Not the brief, calculated expression from before, but something real and warm. He looked different when he smiled, younger, less like the Viper and more like just a father having dinner with his daughter. Nora set down the drinks. Are you ready to order, or do you need a few minutes? Lily wants the chicken fingers and fruit. I'll have the salmon, medium. Excellent choices. Nora paused. And Lily, would you like to keep coloring, or would you like some crayons from our children's menu? Lily's eyes went wide. You have a children's menu? We do, with activities. Can I, Daddy, please? Ethan looked at Nora. I didn't know Celestine had a children's menu. We don't advertise it, but Chef Dominic keeps supplies for younger guests. It wasn't quite true. Dominic hated cooking for children, but Nora would figure something out. That would be wonderful, thank you, Ethan said quietly. When Nora brought the children's menu, which she'd hastily assembled from printer paper, crayons from the supply closet, and a word search she'd found online, Lily looked like she'd been given treasure. The dinner passed differently than Nora had expected. No tests over water temperature, no sent-back dishes, just a father and daughter having a meal, and Nora serving them like any other table. Lily talked non-stop about school, about her friend Emma, who had the same name as Nora's sister, about the book she was reading, about the purple horse she still wanted. Ethan listened with obvious attention, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts, being present in a way that seemed completely at odds with the cold man who'd left a penny on the table. When Nora cleared the plates, Lily grabbed her hand. "Miss Nora, you're my favorite waitress ever." "Thank you, Lily. That's very sweet." "Are you here every day? Can you be our waitress next time, too?" Nora glanced at Ethan, who was watching this interaction with that same unreadable expression. "I work most evenings," Nora said carefully. "So, probably." "Good." Lily went back to her coloring book, satisfied. Ethan waited until Lily was distracted, then spoke quietly. "Thank you for the children's menu. You didn't have to do that." "It was nothing." "It wasn't nothing." He paused. "She doesn't usually warm up to people this quickly." Nora didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and went to get the dessert menu. Lily ordered chocolate cake. Ethan declined dessert but ordered coffee. When Nora brought both, the little girl was starting to fade, her energy finally running out. "I'm sleepy, Daddy." "I know, sweetheart. Just a little longer, then we'll go home." Lily leaned against her father's arm, and Ethan shifted to accommodate her, letting her rest while he finished his coffee. It was such a simple gesture, but it completely transformed him. The viper was gone. This was just a tired father with a tired daughter, trying to make it through another evening. When the check came, Ethan signed it and stood, carefully lifting Lily into his arms. She was already half asleep, her head on his shoulder. "Thank you, Nora," he said quietly, "for everything." "Of course, Mr. Vale. Good night." He carried his daughter out of the restaurant, moving carefully through the tables, and Nora watched them go. The folder sat on table 7. Nora opened it. $1,000 this time. $1,000 in cash, and another note. For making her smile. E.V. She sat down hard in the chair, staring at the money, her mind completely blank. "Is that what I think it is?" Jessica appeared, saw the cash, and made a choking sound. "That's insane, Nora, what is happening?" "I have no idea." "Did he say anything, ask for anything?" "No, we just served them dinner. His daughter was there." Jessica sat down across from her. "Okay, this is getting weird. A penny, then 500, now 1,000? What's next, 10,000? A marriage proposal? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm sitting, a billionaire is throwing money at you for reasons that make 0 sense, and that's usually how horror movies start." Nora couldn't argue with that logic. She took the money home, added it to the envelope that was rapidly becoming the most valuable thing she owned, and lay awake all night trying to understand. Ethan Vale was cruel. He was cold. He was the viper, the man who made servers cry, who sent back perfect steaks, who left pennies to prove a point. But he was also a father who smiled at frog stories, who carried his sleeping daughter through crowded restaurants, who left $1,000 tips because someone had made his little girl happy. Both things were true. Both versions existed in the same person, and Nora had no idea which one was real. 2 weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. Ethan Vale came to Celestine 4 more times, always requesting table 7, always requesting Nora. Sometimes he brought Lily, who would color and chatter and ask Nora questions about everything from favorite colors to whether penguins could fly. Sometimes he came alone, working through meals with that intense focus that made the rest of the restaurant fade into background noise. The tips were always excessive. $300 for a lunch that took 40 minutes, $700 for a dinner where he barely spoke. The money accumulated in Nora's envelope like evidence of something she couldn't name, couldn't understand, couldn't quite bring herself to refuse. She paid off her smallest credit card. Then another, made a dent in the medical bills from 2 years ago when she'd had pneumonia and no insurance. The number that had been 80,000 started creeping downward, 76,000, 72,000, 68,000. It should have felt like winning. Instead, it felt like standing on a cliff edge, waiting for the ground to give way. Carlos noticed the change in her. Everyone did. "You're different," he said one night during cleanup. "Less terrified, more, I don't know, present. I'm just doing my job." "Yeah, but you're not hiding anymore. That first week you looked like you wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Now you actually make eye contact with customers." He paused. "It's the money, isn't it? Having breathing room changes things." He was right, though Nora hated admitting it. The constant panic had eased. She could buy groceries without calculating every penny. She could ride the subway without that sick feeling of falling further behind with every minute that passed. But the money came with questions she couldn't answer and a connection to Ethan Vale that felt increasingly complicated. On the 15th day, everything changed. It started normally enough. Evening shift, full dining room, Nora working tables. 1 through 6 with practice deficiency. Table 7 was empty. Ethan hadn't made a reservation, which was unusual but not alarming. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he'd grown bored with whatever game he was playing. Nora was clearing table 4 when she heard the crash. Not a dropped plate or a toppled wine glass. Something heavier, more violent. The sound of a body hitting the floor near the entrance. The entire dining room went silent. Nora turned to see a man collapse just inside the doorway. Other customers backing away. Someone screaming for help. For a frozen second, nobody moved. Then training kicked in. "Call 911!" Nora shouted to Carlos, already moving toward the fallen man. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands shaking but steady enough. He was breathing, thank everything, but unconscious. She checked for obvious injuries, felt for a pulse at his neck. Strong and steady, not a heart attack then. "Sir, can you hear me?" She patted his shoulder gently. "Sir?" The man's eyes fluttered open. Confusion, then recognition, then embarrassment flooded his features. "I'm fine, I skipped lunch, the heat outside." "Don't move yet. Paramedics are coming." Nora looked up at the crowd. "Can someone get him water? And tell Chef we need something with sugar, fast. Juice or soda." People scattered to help. Within seconds, someone handed her a glass of orange juice. Nora helped the man sit up slowly, supporting his back, and held the juice while he drank. "Thank you," he managed. "I feel like an idiot." "You passed out. It happens." Nora kept her voice calm, soothing. "Just breathe. Help is coming." By the time the paramedics arrived, the man was sitting upright, color returning to his face, insisting he was fine and mortified by the attention. They checked him anyway, confirmed low blood sugar and dehydration, recommended he actually go to the hospital. "I'll be fine, he kept saying. "I just need to eat something." "Then eat something," one of the paramedics said dryly. "You're in a restaurant." Manuel appeared at Nora's elbow once the paramedics left. "That was well handled. Quick thinking. Anyone would have done the same. Most people would have frozen. You didn't." He paused. "Take 15 minutes. Get some air." Nora didn't argue. She slipped out the back entrance into the alley behind Celestine, leaning against the brick wall and trying to stop her hands from shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her jittery and strange. She'd learned basic first aid during a summer job years ago, enough to know what to do in an emergency. But knowing and doing were different things, and the reality of a person collapsing in front of her had been terrifying in a way she hadn't expected. The alley was narrow and smelled like garbage and old cooking oil. Not pleasant, but private. Nora closed her eyes and counted her breaths, trying to calm down. That's when she heard it, a small, choked sound, almost like crying. Nora opened her eyes and looked down the alley. In the shadows near the dumpster, partially hidden, sat a small figure. Lily. Nora's heart jumped. "Lily! Honey, what are you doing out here?" The little girl looked up, her face streaked with tears, her careful braids coming undone. "I can't find Daddy." Nora knelt beside her immediately. "What do you mean? Where is he? Where? We were supposed to meet here for dinner, but he's not inside and he's not answering his phone, and I don't know where he is." Lily's voice broke. "I waited and waited, and then I came out here to look, and now I'm lost and—" Okay, you're not lost. I'm here." Nora pulled Lily into a hug without thinking, and the little girl clung to her. "When did you last see your father?" "This morning. Mrs. Chen was supposed to bring me here at 7, but she had to leave early because her daughter got sick, so she dropped me off at 6:30 and said to wait inside, but they wouldn't let me wait without an adult, and I didn't know what to do." 6:30. It was now almost 8. This child had been alone for over an hour, trying to navigate a situation no 7-year-old should have to handle. "It's okay. We'll figure this out." Nora kept her voice steady, calm, even though inside she was furious at whatever circumstances had led to Lily being abandoned. "Let's go inside where it's warm. We'll call your father together." "I already tried. He's not answering." "Then we'll try again." And if he doesn't answer, we'll call someone else. Your father has people who work for him, right? Lily nodded miserably. Then we'll call them. Come on. Nora stood, taking Lily's hand, and led her back into the restaurant through the back entrance. Manuel took one look at them and frowned. What's going on? This is Lily, Mr. Vale's daughter. She's supposed to meet him for dinner, but there's been some kind of miscommunication. Nora kept her voice low. Can we use the office? I need to make some calls. Manuel's expression shifted from annoyed to concerned. Of course. Whatever you need. The office was small and cluttered, filled with filing cabinets and scheduling sheets and invoices. Nora sat Lily down in the desk chair and pulled out her own phone. What's your father's number? Lily recited it from memory. Nora dialed. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. Mr. Vale, this is Nora from Celestine. Lily is here with me. She's safe, but we need to reach you. Please call back as soon as you get this. She hung up and looked at Lily. Does your father have an assistant? Someone who might know where he is? Mr. Patterson? He works with Daddy. Do you know his number? Lily shook her head. But Daddy's phone has it saved. Which didn't help if Ethan wasn't answering his phone. Nora tried calling again. Voicemail again. Okay, new plan. What's your address? We can call your house, see if anyone's there. We don't have a house. We have an apartment. Lily recited an address in Tribeca that probably cost more per month than most people made in a year. Nora called information, got the building's main desk, explained the situation. The doorman was helpful, but not optimistic. Mr. Vale left this morning around 7 a.m. Haven't seen him come back. I can try his apartment, but if he's not answering his cell, he won't answer the landline either. Dead end after dead end. Nora thanked him and hung up, trying to think. Where would Ethan Vale be at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday that would make him unreachable and late for dinner with his daughter? Does your father have meetings that run late sometimes? All the time, Lily said quietly. But he always tells me. He always calls if he's going to be late. Which meant something had gone wrong. An accident, a medical emergency, or just a billionaire who'd forgotten about dinner and turned off his phone? Nora wanted to believe the best, but she'd seen enough of the world to know that people forgot things. Even important things, even their own children. All right, Lily, here's what we're going to do. You're going to stay with me for now. We'll get you some dinner, and we'll keep trying your father's phone. If we don't reach him in the next hour, we'll call the police and let them sort it out. Does that sound okay? Lily nodded, though fresh tears were building. Is Daddy okay? I'm sure he's fine, probably just stuck in a meeting where he can't check his phone. Nora smoothed Lily's messy hair. You must be hungry. What do you want to eat? I don't know. I'm not really hungry. How about we get you the chicken fingers you like and some fruit? You don't have to eat all of it, but we should put something in your stomach. They left the office and went back to the dining room. Nora got Lily settled at table 7. It felt appropriate somehow, and put in an order for chicken fingers, fruit, and hot chocolate. While they waited, Nora tried Ethan's number 3 more times. Voicemail. 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 Lily picked at her food when it arrived, clearly too worried to eat much. Nora sat with her, breaking about 12 different restaurant protocols, and tried to keep the conversation light. Tell me about school. What are you learning right now? Reading. We're doing a unit on fairy tales. Lily pushed a grape around her plate. Miss Nora, what if something bad happened to Daddy? Then the police would have called you. No news is good news in situations like this. But what if... Nora's phone rang. She grabbed it so fast she almost dropped it. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Nora? A man's voice, clipped and professional. Yes. Who is this? David Patterson. I'm Ethan Vale's executive assistant. I got a very frantic message from building security saying his daughter was at Celestine trying to reach him. Relief flooded through Nora. Yes. Lily is here with me. She's safe, but we've been trying to reach Mr. Vale for over an hour. He's in the hospital. Nora's blood went cold. What? Car accident. Not serious, but he's banged up enough that they're keeping him overnight for observation. His phone was destroyed in the crash. Patterson paused. I'm sending a car for Lily now. Should be there in 10 minutes. Wait. Is Mr. Vale okay? Does Lily need to go to the hospital? He specifically said not to bring her. He doesn't want her to see him like this. The car will take her home, and Mrs. Chen will meet her there. Mrs. Chen had to leave early tonight. That's why Lily ended up here alone. Patterson swore quietly. Then I'll handle it. I'll meet the car at the apartment myself, but I need you to keep Lily calm until the car arrives. Can you do that? Of course. Thank you. Ethan will want to thank you himself when he's able. Patterson hung up. Nora sat there for a moment, processing. Car accident. Hospital. Phone destroyed. The pieces fit together into a picture that made sense but felt surreal. Lily was staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. What happened? Is Daddy hurt? Nora chose her words carefully. Your father was in a small car accident. He's okay, but he's at the hospital getting checked out. That's why he couldn't call. His phone broke. Mr. Patterson is sending a car to take you home, and he'll be there to stay with you until your father gets back. I want to see Daddy. I know, sweetheart, but your father doesn't want you to worry. He said to go home, and he'll see you tomorrow. Is he really okay? Mr. Patterson said it wasn't serious. Your father is going to be fine. Lily started crying again, but quietly this time, the tears of relief rather than panic. Nora held her hand and let her cry, not trying to stop it, just being present. The car arrived 12 minutes later. A black town car with a driver who looked like he'd done this 1,000 times. Nora walked Lily out, made sure she got in safely, and stood on the sidewalk watching until the car disappeared into traffic. Only then did she let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. Ethan Vale had been in a car accident. He was in the hospital. His daughter had been alone and terrified because the systems that were supposed to protect her had all failed at once, and Nora had been the one to catch her. She went back inside, finished her shift in a daze, and went home to her tiny apartment where she sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Her phone buzzed around 11 p.m. Unknown number again. Hello? Nora. It's David Patterson. Just wanted to confirm that Lily got home safely and is settled. Also, Ethan wanted me to tell you thank you. How is he? Annoyed mostly. Broken wrist, some bruised ribs, a lot of scrapes. The other driver ran a red light and T-boned his car. Ethan's lucky it wasn't worse. Tell him I'm glad he's okay. And tell him not to worry about Lily. She was very brave. I will. Patterson paused. He also wanted me to ask if you'd be willing to visit him tomorrow, at the hospital. He said there's something he needs to tell you. Nora's stomach flipped. Visit him? I don't think that's appropriate. He was very insistent, said it's important. Patterson rattled off the hospital name and room number. No pressure, but he'd appreciate it. After Patterson hung up, Nora sat in the dark and tried to decide what to do. She could ignore the request. Keep the boundaries clear. Ethan Vale was a customer, nothing more, and visiting him in the hospital crossed lines she'd been careful to maintain. But she'd held his daughter while she cried. She'd been the one Lily had trusted when everything fell apart. That changed things, whether Nora wanted it to or not. The next day was her day off. She spent the morning cleaning her apartment, doing laundry, avoiding the decision. But by noon, she'd made up her mind. The hospital was in Midtown, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that screamed money. Nora checked in at the desk, got a visitor's badge, and took the elevator to the 4th floor, room 412. She knocked softly. Come in, Ethan's voice called. Nora pushed open the door. Ethan Vale sat propped up in the hospital bed, his left wrist in a cast, visible bruises on his face and arms, looking both better and worse than she'd imagined. He was wearing a hospital gown, which somehow made him look less intimidating, more human. Nora, you came. Mr. Patterson said you wanted to see me. I did. Sit down, please. Ethan gestured to the chair beside the bed. Nora sat, uncomfortable in the sterile room. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a car. He smiled slightly. Which I did, so that's accurate. But I'll live. The wrist is the worst of it. 6 weeks in the cast. I'm glad it wasn't worse. So am I. Ethan shifted, wincing. Patterson told me what happened. That Lily ended up at the restaurant alone, that you took care of her until the car arrived. I wanted to thank you. Anyone would have done the same. No, they wouldn't. Most people would have called social services and let the system handle it. You stayed with her, kept her calm, made sure she was safe. Ethan's voice was rough. That means more than you know. Nora didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Ethan reached for something on the bedside table, fumbling one-handed. The paramedics gave me this. They found it in the car wreckage. I wanted you to have it. He held out a small silver locket, tarnished and dented, the chain broken. Nora took it carefully. I don't understand. Why would I... Open it. She did. Inside were two tiny photographs. Two boys, identical, maybe 5 years old, grinning at the camera. Brothers. Twins. That's me and my brother Marcus, Ethan said quietly. We were inseparable growing up. Did everything together. Went to the same schools, same college, started our first business together. Nora looked up from the locket. Were? He died 3 years ago. Cardiac arrest. Sudden, unexpected, no warning. He was 32 years old and one morning he just didn't wake up. Ethan's voice was flat, but something underneath it wasn't. We were supposed to have breakfast that day. I was late to the restaurant, stuck in a meeting I thought was important. By the time I got there, Marcus was already gone. Paramedics were loading him into an ambulance. I never got to say goodbye. The pieces started clicking into place. The cruelty, the tests, the impossible standards. You blame yourself, Nora said softly. Wouldn't you? I chose a meeting over breakfast with my brother. I chose work over the last chance I'd ever have to see him alive. Ethan looked at the locket in Nora's hands. After he died, something broke in me. I couldn't let things slide anymore. Couldn't accept anything less than perfect. If water was supposed to be room temperature, it had to be exactly that. If a steak was supposed to be medium rare, it had to be precisely cooked. Because if I couldn't control small things, how could I control anything? That's not control, Nora said. That's grief. I know, now. But for 3 years, I didn't know the difference. Ethan shifted again, clearly uncomfortable, but pushing through. And then my wife died giving birth to Lily. Complications nobody saw coming. I had this perfect daughter and no idea how to raise her alone. Marcus would have known what to do. He was always better with people, better at emotions. I'm just... this. He gestured at himself, the hospital bed, the broken wrist, the bruises. I started coming to Celestine because Marcus and I used to eat there. It was our place. And I started being cruel to the staff because I was angry at everyone and everything, and they were the easiest targets. The penny thing? That was me seeing how far I could push before someone pushed back. And I didn't push back, Nora said. I just took it. You did more than that. You came back. You didn't quit, didn't break, didn't let me win. Ethan met her eyes. And then you were kind to my daughter. You made her smile when I'd forgotten how. You reminded me that people aren't just obstacles or tests or disappointments. Sometimes they're just people trying their best. Nora looked at the locket again. 2 boys, frozen in time before life got complicated. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked me once why I left you a penny. I never answered. Now I am. Ethan paused. I left you a penny because I wanted you to quit. I wanted you to prove that everyone eventually breaks, that I was right to keep people at a distance, but you didn't break. You stayed, and that scared me. Scared you? Terrified me. Because if you could survive my worst and still show up, still be kind, still take care of Lily when everything went wrong, then maybe I was wrong. Maybe people are stronger than I gave them credit for. Maybe I've been punishing everyone for my brother's death and my own failures. Nora felt something shift in her chest. Understanding, maybe. Or forgiveness for cruelty that suddenly made sense, even if it wasn't right. The tips, she said. The money. That was you trying to fix it. That was me trying to apologize without knowing how. I'm not good at apologies. Ethan smiled slightly. I'm better at throwing money at problems. Money doesn't fix everything. I'm learning that. He gestured to the locket. Keep it, please. Marcus would have liked you. He always said I needed someone who wouldn't put up with my garbage. Nora closed the locket and held it in her palm. I can't keep this. It's too important. It's important enough to give to someone who deserves it. Someone who took care of my daughter when I couldn't. Someone who made me remember what it's like to be human. The room was very quiet. Outside, hospital sounds filtered through, beeping monitors, distant voices, the hum of machinery keeping people alive. I'm sorry about your brother, Nora said finally. And your wife. That's too much loss for anyone. Yeah, it is. Ethan looked tired suddenly, the conversation draining him. But I'm still here. Lily's still here. We're figuring it out. You're doing better than you think. That's generous, considering you've seen me at my worst. I've also seen you at your best. The way you are with Lily. That's who you really are. Ethan didn't respond to that, just looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Gratitude, maybe. Or something deeper. A nurse came in then, bustling and efficient, checking monitors and asking questions. Nora stood. I should go. Let you rest. Nora. Ethan stopped her at the door. Thank you for coming. For everything. You already thanked me. I know, but I mean it. Nora left the hospital with the locket in her pocket, her mind spinning. The Viper had a name now. A history. A reason for the cruelty that didn't excuse it but at least explained it. She rode the subway home, holding the locket like a talisman. 2 boys, before tragedy. Before loss shaped them into something harder. In her apartment, Nora put the locket on the shelf next to the jar with the penny. Opposites. 1 cent and something priceless. The full arc of her strange relationship with Ethan Vale. She didn't know what happened next, didn't know if this changed anything or nothing, but for the first time since taking the job at Celestine, she felt like she understood the man in Table 7. And understanding she was learning was its own kind of power. 3 days after the hospital visit, Ethan returned to Celestine with his arm still in a cast and Lily holding his good hand. The dining room did a collective double-take. The Viper, injured and clearly struggling, letting his 7-year-old daughter lead him to Table 7 like she was the one in charge. Nora was already working her section when they arrived. She felt her chest tighten when she saw them, the locket suddenly heavy in her pocket. She'd been carrying it with her since the hospital, unable to leave it at home, unable to fully accept that it was hers. Manuel intercepted her before she could reach the table. Vale just requested you again. Whatever magic you're working, keep it up. His tips alone are covering our slow nights. It's not magic, it's just... But Nora didn't know how to finish that sentence. What was it? Understanding? History? Some strange bond forged through cruelty and kindness in a child who needed both of them? She approached Table 7 carefully. Lily saw her first and lit up. Miss Nora, look, Daddy's back. The doctor's fixed his arm, but he has to wear that thing for forever. 6 weeks isn't forever, Lily, Ethan said, but he was smiling. Actually smiling, not the cold calculation from before, but something warm and real. Hello, Nora. Mr. Vale, it's good to see you up and around. Ethan, he corrected quietly. I think we're past Mr. Vale, don't you? The shift felt monumental. Customers didn't invite servers to use their first names. That wasn't how this world worked. But then again, customers didn't usually confess their deepest grief in hospital rooms either. Ethan, Nora repeated, testing the word. It felt strange in her mouth, too familiar, too intimate. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a car, but better than yesterday. He gestured at the cast. Typing is impossible. Lily's been helping me answer emails. I'm very good at typing, Lily announced proudly. I can do capitals and periods and everything. I'm sure you're excellent. Nora pulled out her notepad, falling back into the safety of routine. What can I get you both tonight? They ordered chicken fingers for Lily, salmon for Ethan, water for both, and Nora retreated to the kitchen. Her hands were steadier now than they'd been that first night. The fear had burned away, replaced by something she couldn't quite name. Not friendship exactly, not with a billionaire who'd humiliated her over water temperature. But not nothing either. The evening settled into familiar patterns. Nora served her tables, checked on Lily and Ethan periodically, brought coloring pages and crayons without being asked. Lily chattered about school, about the purple horse she still wanted, about how her daddy was being super brave about his broken arm, even though she knew it hurt. Ethan mostly listened, occasionally interjecting, looking more relaxed than Nora had ever seen him. The sharp edges were still there. You didn't lose 3 years of grief and anger overnight, but they were softer now, less like weapons, more like scars. Around 7:30, the front door opened and a man walked in who made the entire restaurant tense. Gregory fucking Ashworth. Even Nora, who paid minimal attention to the food critic world, knew that name. Ashworth wrote for the Manhattan Herald and had a reputation for destroying restaurants with a single review. 3 stars meant packed reservations for months. 1 star meant bankruptcy within a year. He was brutal, unforgiving, and rumored to take pleasure in watching chefs cry. Manuel went pale. That's Ashworth. He didn't make a reservation. This is a surprise review. Surprise reviews were the worst. No time to prepare, no chance to make sure everything was perfect. Just raw performance, judged by someone who wanted you to fail. "Who's taking his table?" Jessica whispered. "Not it," Carlos said immediately. Everyone looked at each other, suddenly very interested in their own sections. Ashworth was settling into table 10, which technically belonged to Marcus, a waiter who'd called in sick 2 hours ago. Manuel's eyes landed on Nora. "You're up." "What? No, I can't." "You handled Vale. You can handle Ashworth." Manuel's voice was firm. "Besides, everyone else is busy." It was a lie. Carlos could easily take the table, but Manuel had decided, and arguing would only make things worse. Nora approached table 10 with her heart in her throat. Gregory Ashworth was exactly what she'd expected. Mid-50s, gray hair, expensive suit, an expression that suggested he'd smelled something rotten and decided to stay anyway. He was already studying the menu with the intensity of someone looking for mistakes. "Good evening, sir. My name is Nora, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Ashworth didn't look up. "Water, sparkling. Tell Chef Dominic that Gregory Ashworth is here and expects his best work." The threat was implicit. Do well, and maybe he'd be kind. Do poorly, and Celestine would be crucified in print. Nora brought the sparkling water, took his order, the tasting menu, 7 courses, no modifications, and delivered the information to the kitchen. Dominic's reaction was immediate and volcanic. "Ashworth, tonight. When Marcus isn't here and we're short a line cook because Tony's kid has the flu? Are you kidding me?" "I wish I was, chef. That sadistic bastard probably planned it this way. He always hits restaurants when they're vulnerable." Dominic slammed his hand on the counter. "Fine. Everyone listen up. We're doing the tasting menu for table 10, and it needs to be flawless. Not good, not great, perfect. This review could make or break us." The kitchen erupted into controlled chaos. Every dish was scrutinized, every plate inspected, every sauce tasted 3 times. Nora ran courses to table 10 with the precision of someone defusing bombs. First course, scallops with citrus foam. Ashworth took 1 bite, made a note in his phone, said nothing. Second course, butternut squash soup with sage oil. Another bite, another note, silence. Third course, duck confit with cherry reduction, same pattern. It was excruciating. Most diners gave some feedback, some reaction. Ashworth was a black hole of response, absorbing everything and giving nothing back. Nora was clearing the third course when she noticed Ethan watching from table 7. He'd finished his own meal but hadn't asked for the check yet. Lily was coloring, oblivious, but Ethan's attention was fixed on table 10. The fourth course went out. Wild mushroom risotto with truffle shavings. Dominic's specialty, the dish that had earned Celestine its reputation. Ashworth took a bite, chewed slowly, swallowed, then pushed the plate away, barely touched. Nora felt her stomach drop. "Is something wrong with the risotto, sir?" "It's adequate." Adequate. The word was a knife. Dominic's risotto wasn't adequate. It was spectacular. Every food magazine in New York had praised it. "Would you like something else instead?" "No, bring the next course." Nora took the rejected risotto back to the kitchen. Dominic stared at it like it had personally betrayed him. He said, "What?" "Adequate." "That's impossible. This is perfect risotto. The texture, the seasoning, the truffle integration, everything is exact." Dominic grabbed a fork, tasted it himself. "This is the best batch I've made all month. What the hell does he want?" Nobody had an answer. The fifth course was halibut with herb crust. Ashworth ate 3 bites and pushed it away. Overcooked. It wasn't overcooked. Nora could see that just by looking. The fish was perfectly flaky, the crust golden and crispy. But arguing with Ashworth would only make things worse. The 6th course was Wagyu beef, with roasted vegetables. Ashworth cut into it, examined the interior, and set down his fork without tasting. "I asked for medium rare. This is medium." Nora's blood ran cold. She'd heard those exact words before, in this same dining room, from a different customer. But Ethan had been testing her, pushing boundaries to see where she'd break. Ashworth was different. He was building a case, constructing a narrative of failure that he could publish to thousands of readers. "I'll have chef prepare another, sir." Don't bother. I've seen enough. Sir, please. I said don't bother. Ashworth pulled out his phone and started typing, right there at the table. Your chef is inconsistent. The risotto was bland, the fish was dry, the beef was overcooked. I'll be noting all of this in my review. None of it was true. Nora had watched those dishes come out of the kitchen. They were perfect. This wasn't criticism. This was a hit job. Mr. Ashworth, I understand you have high standards, but do you know who I am? Yes, sir. Then you know my word matters. When I publish my review next week, people will listen. And what I'm going to tell them is that Celestine has gotten complacent, that the food is mediocre, that the service, he looked at Nora with something close to disgust, is defensive and unprofessional. Nora felt like she'd been slapped. I haven't been unprofessional, sir. I'm simply trying to understand, are you arguing with me? It was the same trap Ethan had set that first night. Say yes, and you're insubordinate. Say no, and you accept the lie. But Nora had learned something in the past month. She'd learned that some tests weren't meant to be passed. Some traps were designed to close no matter what you did. And sometimes the only winning move was to refuse to play. Yes, she said quietly, I am arguing with you because you're lying. The dining room went dead silent. Ashworth stared at her. Excuse me? The risotto wasn't bland. The fish wasn't dry. The beef was cooked exactly to your specifications. You're not critiquing the food. You're manufacturing a negative review for reasons I don't understand. How dare you? I dare, because I've watched Chef Dominic prepare every single one of those dishes with more care and skill than most people bring to anything in their lives. And you've dismissed all of it with made-up complaints that any actual food expert would see through immediately. Ashworth stood up, his face red. I have been reviewing restaurants for 25 years. I know what good food tastes like, and this isn't it. Then you've forgotten. Nora was shaking, but she held her ground. Or you never knew in the first place. Manuel appeared at her elbow, his face ashen. Mr. Ashworth, I'm so sorry. Nora is new. She doesn't understand. She understands perfectly. Ashworth threw cash on the table, more than enough to cover his bill. And she's just cost your restaurant any chance at a fair review. Expect 1 star and a detailed description of your incompetent staff. He stormed out. The silence that followed was deafening. Manuel turned to Nora, his voice shaking. My office. Now. Nora followed him, her legs weak. She'd just destroyed her job, destroyed the restaurant's reputation, destroyed everything over a principle that probably didn't matter to anyone but her. In the office, Manuel closed the door and exploded. What the hell were you thinking? That was Gregory Ashworth. Do you have any idea what you've done? He was lying about the food. I don't care if he was lying. You smile, you apologize, you comp the meal, and you let him write whatever he wants. Manuel was pacing, running his hands through his hair. 1 star from Ashworth means we lose half our reservations. It means staff layoffs. It means we might have to close. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Manuel pointed at the door. You're done for tonight. Go home. I need to figure out how to do damage control before that review publishes. Nora left the office feeling numb. She grabbed her bag from the break room, ignoring the stares from the other servers, and headed for the exit. She made it to the alley before the tears started. Great, heaving sobs that she'd been holding back since Ashworth's attack. She'd tried to do the right thing, tried to defend Dominic's work, and all she'd done was make everything worse. The door opened behind her. Nora wiped her eyes, expecting Carlos or Jessica with awkward comfort. Instead, Ethan stood there, his expression unreadable. You okay? Do I look okay? The words came out harsher than she intended. I just got fired for telling a critic the truth. I'm fantastic. You didn't get fired. Manuel told you to go home for the night. Ethan stepped closer. There's a difference. Not much of one, Nora laughed bitterly. And even if I'm not fired yet, I will be once that review comes out. Ashworth's going to destroy this place, and it's my fault. It's not your fault. Ashworth's been gunning for Celestine for months. Ethan leaned against the wall. You didn't know this, but Dominic used to work for Ashworth's brother-in-law. There was a falling out, something about stolen recipes. This was never about the food. It was personal. How do you know that? Because I make it my business to know things, especially things that affect places I care about. Ethan paused. What you did in there, standing up for Dominic, calling out Ashworth's lies, that took courage. Most people would have folded. Most people wouldn't have been stupid enough to argue with a critic. Maybe. But you weren't stupid. You were right. Ethan pushed off the wall. Wait here. What? Where are you going? To fix this. Before Nora could ask what that meant, Ethan walked back into the restaurant. She stood in the alley, confused and still crying, until curiosity won over despair. She followed him inside. Ethan had returned to table 7, where Lily was still coloring, completely oblivious to the drama. But he wasn't sitting down. He was standing, looking around the dining room with the same intense focus he usually reserved for business deals. Then he started walking toward the center of the restaurant. Excuse me, Ethan said, his voice cutting through the ambient conversation. Could I have everyone's attention for a moment? The dining room went quiet. Customers looked up from their meals. Servers froze mid-step. Manuel emerged from the kitchen, looking panicked. Ethan continued, calm and authoritative. My name is Ethan Vale. Some of you might know me. Most of you probably don't care. But I've been eating at Celestine for 3 years, and I need to say something about what just happened. Nora's heart was pounding. What was he doing? A few minutes ago, a man named Gregory Ashworth walked out of this restaurant claiming the food was subpar. He's going to publish a review next week saying Celestine has declined, that the dishes are mediocre, that you shouldn't waste your time or money here. Ethan paused. He's lying. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, I've eaten at every major restaurant in Manhattan. I've had meals in Paris, Tokyo, Barcelona, San Francisco. And I can tell you without hesitation that Chef Dominic produces some of the finest food in this city. The risotto he makes is better than anything I've had in Italy. His fish is consistently perfect. His attention to detail is exceptional. Ethan's voice grew stronger. But Ashworth didn't come here to review the food honestly. He came here with an agenda, a personal grudge that has nothing to do with culinary skill and everything to do with petty revenge. He looked around the room, making eye contact with individual diners. So here's what I'm asking. When that review comes out next week, don't believe it. Come here yourself. Try the food. Judge with your own palate, not Ashworth's poison pen. And if you're still not convinced, Ethan pulled out his phone. I'm posting on every social media platform I have right now. Celestine is one of the best restaurants in New York, and no bitter critic can change that truth. He started typing right there in the middle of the dining room. Within seconds, his phone was buzzing with notifications. Whatever he'd posted was already getting traction. Manuel looked like he might cry from relief. The diners started clapping, slowly at first, then building. A woman at table 3 stood up. I've been coming here for 5 years. The food has never been anything less than exceptional. Same, a man at table 8 called out. Ashworth's been wrong before. This is just another grudge match. More people spoke up, defending Celestine, praising Dominic, dismissing Ashworth's credibility. The energy in the room had completely shifted. Ethan walked back to table 7, sat down beside Lily, and looked at Nora. She was standing near the kitchen entrance, tears streaming down her face again, but for different reasons now. He'd defended the restaurant. He'd used his influence, his platform, his reputation to counter Ashworth's attack. And he'd done it publicly, in front of witnesses, creating a narrative that would spread faster than any printed review. Manuel approached Ethan's table, his voice thick with emotion. Mr. Vale, Ethan, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Nora. She's the one who refused to let Ashworth's lies stand unchallenged. Ethan glanced at her. She's the one who reminded me what integrity looks like. Manuel turned to Nora. You're not going home. Get back to work. We've got a dining room to serve. The rest of the night passed in a blur of gratitude and adrenaline. Customers kept stopping Nora to praise her courage. Dominic came out of the kitchen to personally thank Ethan, his eyes red from what might have been tears or might have been the smoke from the grill. When the shift finally ended around 11, Nora's tips for the night were the highest she'd ever made. People had been absurdly generous, as if they were apologizing on Ashworth's behalf. She was counting the money in the break room when Ethan appeared in the doorway. Lily's asleep in my car downstairs, he said, but I wanted to talk to you before I left. Nora set down the cash. You didn't have to do what you did tonight. Yes, I did. Ethan sat down on the bench beside her. 3 weeks ago, I left you a penny because I wanted to break you. Tonight, You stood up to a man who could have destroyed your career, all because you believed in something bigger than yourself. That's not just courage, that's character. It was stupid. It was both. He smiled slightly. But I'm learning that the best things usually are. They sat in silence for a moment. The break room was small and cramped, smelling of old coffee and cleaning supplies. Not romantic, not special. Just two people who'd somehow become important to each other through the strangest possible circumstances. The locket, Nora said quietly. I've been carrying it with me. I still don't think I should keep it. Why not? Because it's too important. It's your brother. It's your history. Ethan reached into his jacket, carefully favoring his broken wrist, and pulled out a small envelope. Then read this before you decide. Nora opened it. Inside was a note in careful handwriting. I found this in Marcus's apartment after he died, Ethan explained. It was in his journal, dated 2 weeks before his death. I think he had some kind of premonition, though the doctors say that's impossible. Nora read the note. If something happens to me, give the locket to someone who needs it. Not someone who wants it, someone who needs to remember that people can be kind even when the world is cruel. Someone who fights even when they're scared. Someone like you used to be before you forgot how. The last sentence was a gut punch. He was talking to you, Nora whispered. I think he was talking about both of us. Ethan's voice was rough. Marcus always said I'd turned into someone he didn't recognize. That grief had made me small and mean. He wanted me to remember who I used to be. And I think he'd want the locket to go to someone who still remembers what that looks like. Nora folded the note carefully and put it back in the envelope. Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for reminding me why it matters. Ethan stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. The debt you have, the $80,000 or whatever it is, $62,000 now, Nora said quietly. The tips have been helping. I want to clear it. Nora's breath caught. Ethan, no, not as payment, not as charity, as an investment. He met her eyes. I'm starting a new division at my company. Executive training, corporate culture, leadership development. And I need someone who understands people, who doesn't give up when things get hard, who knows the difference between cruelty and honesty. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a future. Better pay than waitressing, better hours, real benefits. You'd be good at it, and I need someone I can trust. Ethan paused. The debt clearing is a signing bonus. Take the job, and it's gone. Refuse, and we never speak of it again. Nora stared at him. This was insane. She had no experience in corporate training, no qualifications, no reason to believe she could do what he was describing. But then again, she'd had no reason to believe she could survive Table 7 either, and she had. I need to think about it, she said finally. Fair enough, think. But Nora, Ethan's expression was serious. You deserve better than this. Better than Manuel screaming at you, better than Ashworth's attacks, better than working yourself to exhaustion for tips that barely cover rent. You're worth more. He left before she could respond. Nora sat alone in this break room, surrounded by money she'd earned through courage she didn't know she had, holding a locket that represented everything she'd never expected to find. A new job, a cleared debt, a future that looked nothing like the desperate present she'd been clinging to. She thought about the penny, still sitting in the jar at home, the first message from Ethan Vale, telling her she was worthless. And she thought about tonight, when he'd stood in front of an entire restaurant and told them she had integrity. Both were true. Both versions existed. The question was which one she'd believe. Nora didn't sleep that night. She lay in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, the locket on her nightstand catching streetlight from the window. Ethan's offer replayed in her mind on an endless loop. A real job. $62,000 of debt erased like it had never existed. A future that didn't involve aching feet and demanding customers, and the constant fear of falling further behind. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. By morning, she'd made a decision. She needed to talk to someone who'd tell her the truth without sugarcoating it. She called Emma. You're calling at 6 a.m., her sister answered, voice thick with sleep. Someone better be dead or you better be getting married. Neither. I need advice. Emma made a noise that might have been a groan or a laugh. Hold on. Let me make coffee. Nora waited, listening to the sounds of Emma's apartment coming to life. Water running, cupboards opening, the familiar ritual of her sister waking up. When Emma came back on the line, she sounded more alert. "Okay, hit me. What's going on?" Nora told her everything: the penny, the tips, the hospital visit, the locket, last night's confrontation with Ashworth, and finally, Ethan's job offer. She left nothing out, not even the parts that made her look desperate or stupid or both. Emma was quiet for a long moment after Nora finished. "So let me get this straight. A billionaire who started off treating you like garbage now wants to hire you and pay off your debt, and you're not sure if you should take it. When you say it like that, it sounds obvious." "That's because it is obvious. Nora, what's the actual problem here?" Nora picked up the locket, turning it over in her palm. "I don't know if I can trust it. Trust him. A month ago he was leaving me pennies. Now he's offering me everything. People don't change that fast." "People change exactly that fast when something kicks them hard enough." Emma's voice was gentle. "You told me about his brother, about his wife. He's been drowning for 3 years, and you threw him a rope without even meaning to. That changes a person. But what if he changes back? What if I take the job and he decides I'm not worth it, that this was all some weird impulse? Then you'll have 62,000 less debt and job experience you didn't have before. Worst case scenario, you're still better off than you are right now." Emma paused. "But I don't think that's what's really scaring you." "What do you mean?" "I think you're scared it'll work. That the job will be good, that he'll be decent, that your life will actually get better. Because if it does, you'll have to stop using your debt as a reason to stay small." The words hit like a punch. Nora opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Emma was right. The debt had become an identity, a shield against risk. As long as she was buried under bills and survival, she didn't have to want anything bigger, didn't have to try and possibly fail at something that mattered. "I hate when you do that," Nora said quietly. "Do what?" "See through my bullshit." Emma laughed. "It's a sister superpower, so what are you going to do?" Nora looked at the locket again, 2 boys frozen in time, before loss taught them to be afraid. "I'm going to be brave, or at least pretend to be until it feels real. That's all any of us are doing anyway." They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, the easy comfort of family, before hanging up. Nora showered, dressed in her nicest clothes that weren't her Celestine uniform, and took the subway to the address Ethan had texted her the night before. The building was in Midtown, all glass and steel, and the kind of understated wealth that didn't need to announce itself. The lobby had marble floors and modern art that probably cost more than Nora's yearly salary. She felt immediately out of place, like someone had accidentally let her into the wrong world. The receptionist was professionally pleasant. "You must be Nora Bell. Mr. Vale is expecting you. 23rd floor, corner office." The elevator ride felt like ascending into another dimension. By the time the doors opened, Nora's palms were sweating. Ethan's office was exactly what she'd expected and nothing like it at the same time. Huge windows overlooking Manhattan, expensive furniture, the trappings of success. But also, children's drawings taped to one wall, a purple stuffed horse on the credenza, a framed photo of Lily laughing on a beach somewhere warm. Ethan stood when she entered, his cast visible under his rolled-up shirt sleeve. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," Nora admitted. "But I needed to understand what you're actually offering. Not the money part, the job part." "Fair enough. Sit." Ethan gestured to the chairs across from his desk, then seemed to reconsider. "Actually, let's sit over there. The desk feels too formal." They moved to a small seating area near the windows. Ethan poured coffee from a carafe without asking if she wanted any, just handed her a cup like they'd done this 1,000 times. "The job is real," he started. "I'm building a new division focused on corporate culture and leadership development. Most companies treat their employees like interchangeable parts. I did too, for a long time. But I'm learning that people work better when they're seen, when someone notices if they're struggling, when the environment doesn't grind them down." "That's a nice theory," Nora said carefully. "But how do you teach that?" "That's what I need you to figure out." Ethan smiled slightly. "I can give you the framework, the budget, the resources, but I can't teach people how to be human. That's not my skill set. You, though, you know how to see people. You saw through my cruelty to the grief underneath. You saw Ashworth's lies when everyone else was ready to accept them. You saw Lily needed kindness when I was too stuck in my own head to notice. Those weren't professional skills. Those were just being a decent person. Exactly. And that's what most companies are missing. Ethan leaned forward. I want you to develop training programs that teach managers to actually see their employees, to recognize when someone's drowning in debt or grief or fear, and to create systems that help instead of punish. It's not traditional corporate work, and you'll probably fail a lot at first, but I think you can do it. Nora set down her coffee cup. Why me, though? You could hire someone with an actual degree in organizational psychology or human resources. I could. And they'd give me the same recycled theories every other company uses. I want something different, someone who's lived at the bottom and understands what people need to survive. Ethan paused. You remind me of Marcus. He always said the best leaders were the ones who'd been broken and put themselves back together. They're the only ones who know how fragile everything really is. The comparison to Marcus felt weighted, important. Nora picked up the coffee again, buying time to think. Through the window, Manhattan spread out below them, millions of people trying to survive, trying to matter, trying to build something that wouldn't collapse. If I take this job, she said slowly, I need real authority. Not just a fancy title while you make all the decisions. If I'm going to build something, I need to actually build it. Agreed. And I need you to trust me when I say something won't work. No overruling me because you think you know better. Fair. And if this doesn't work out, if I'm terrible at it or we can't stand working together, I need a guarantee that you won't sabotage my next job. A good reference, professional courtesy, whatever. Ethan smiled fully now. You've thought about this. I thought about it all night. Those terms are all acceptable. Anything else? Nora took a breath. The debt. I need to pay it back. Ethan's smile faded. That's the signing bonus. I know. And I appreciate it more than you can imagine. But I need to earn it, not just have it handed to me. Nora met his eyes. You can pay it off now, clear it immediately so I'm not drowning anymore. But I want it deducted from my salary over time. 5 years, 10 years, whatever makes sense. I need to know I actually earned my freedom. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Respect, maybe. Or understanding. That's going to take longer than just accepting the money. I know. But I'll know it's mine, not a gift, not charity, mine. You're stubborn. You left me a penny to break me. Did you really think I wasn't stubborn? Ethan laughed, and it sounded real, unguarded. Fair point. Okay, we'll set up a payment plan. The debt gets cleared immediately, but you pay it back through salary deductions at whatever rate you're comfortable with. Deal? Nora extended her hand. Deal. They shook on it, and Nora felt something settle in her chest. This was happening. She was actually doing this. The next week blurred into paperwork and logistics. Nora gave her notice at Celestine, enduring Manuel's disappointment and Carlos's genuine happiness for her. Chef Dominic gave her a hug that nearly cracked her ribs and made her promise to come back and visit. Jessica took her out for drinks and told her she was living everyone's fantasy of escaping the service industry. Just don't forget us when you're fancy and corporate, Jessica said, already tipsy on her second cocktail. I couldn't forget even if I wanted to, Nora promised. You people are the reason I survived. On her last shift, the staff threw her a small party in the break room. Cheap wine and grocery store cake, but more genuine affection than Nora had felt in years. They'd been co-workers, not friends exactly, but they'd been in the trenches together, and that created its own kind of bond. Ethan came that night with Lily, one last dinner at table 7. When Nora brought their meals, Lily handed her a drawing. I made this for you. It's a purple horse because you said pictures are important. The drawing was chaotic and perfect, all bright colors and imagination. Nora felt her throat tighten. Thank you, Lily. I love it. Are you really not going to be our waitress anymore? I'm going to be working with your dad instead, but we can still see each other. Good. Lily went back to her chicken fingers, satisfied. Ethan waited until Lily was distracted, then spoke quietly. You ready for Monday? Absolutely not, but I'm showing up anyway. That's all anyone can ask. The last tip he left wasn't money. It was a note on Celestine's stationery. You were worth more than a penny. E.V. Nora folded it carefully and put it in her pocket next to the locket. Monday arrived too fast and not fast enough. Nora showed up at Ethan's building at 8 a.m. wearing clothes she'd bought specifically for this job. Professional, but not trying too hard. The receptionist directed her to a different floor this time, to an office that was smaller than Ethan's, but still nicer than anywhere Nora had ever worked. Her office, with her name on the door. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, just staring. A desk, a computer, a bookshelf, a window with a view. It wasn't much by Billionaire standards, but for someone who'd been sleeping on a mattress in Queens and dodging debt collectors, it was everything. Ethan appeared behind her. You going to go in, or just admire it from the hallway? I'm having a moment. Let me have my moment. Take all the time you need. Nora stepped inside and sat at the desk. The chair was comfortable, the kind that didn't make your back scream after 8 hours. There was a welcome packet, a company laptop, business cards with her name printed on them. Nora Bell, Director of Culture and Development. It felt surreal. So here's the deal, Ethan said, leaning against the doorframe. You have 3 months to develop a pilot program. Pick one department in the company, work with them, figure out what helps and what doesn't. Then we'll expand from there. Questions? About 1 million, but I'll figure it out. Good. I'll check in weekly, but otherwise, this is yours to build. Ethan paused. Don't make me regret this. Don't give me a reason to regret it either. He left her alone to settle in. Nora spent the morning reading through company materials, learning the structure, understanding the problems. The department she chose was customer service, people who dealt with complaints all day, who got screamed at by strangers, who were evaluated based on metrics that didn't account for human complexity. She understood those people. She'd been those people. The first meeting with the customer service team was brutal. 20 employees who looked exhausted and suspicious, clearly expecting another corporate initiative that would make their jobs harder while pretending to help. Nora didn't try to sell them anything. She just told the truth. 6 weeks ago, I was a waitress drowning in debt, she said. I got screamed at by customers, worked 12-hour shifts on my feet, went home too tired to think about anything except surviving the next day. I know what it's like when the people in charge don't see you as human. So I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to ask what you actually need to do your jobs without burning out. The silence was skeptical. Then one woman in the back raised her hand. You're serious? You actually want to know? Completely serious. What followed was 90 minutes of honesty. They needed better breaks, reasonable call quotas, support when customers became abusive, managers who didn't treat metrics as more important than mental health. They needed to be trusted to make decisions without getting overruled. They needed to feel like people instead of robots reading scripts. Nora took notes on everything. Then she took it to Ethan. This is going to cost money, she said, spreading her notes on his desk. Better staffing means more hires. Flexible metrics mean possibly lower numbers in the short term. Training managers to actually support their teams takes time. Ethan read through her notes carefully. Do it. Just like that? You said you needed authority. This is me giving it to you. Build what they need. We'll figure out the budget. It wasn't smooth. Nothing ever was. The first month was chaos. Managers who resisted change, metrics that temporarily dipped, employees who'd been beaten down so long they didn't trust that things could actually get better. Nora worked 16-hour days, came home exhausted, questioned everything. But slowly, things shifted. Call times went down because employees weren't spending 10 minutes getting approval for every decision. Customer satisfaction went up because people who felt supported gave better service. Turnover decreased. The numbers told a story of investment paying off. 2 months in, Ethan called her to his office. Nora went prepared to defend her work, armed with data and examples. Instead, Ethan just said, "It's working. The board noticed. They want you to expand to 3 more departments." Nora sat down hard. You're serious? Completely. You were right. People work better when they're treated like people. Revolutionary concept. His tone was dry, but his smile was genuine. I had a lot of failures to get here. The first training session was a disaster. I accidentally offended the entire accounting department last week. And you fixed it. That's what matters. Ethan paused. You're doing what Marcus always said I should do. Building something that doesn't grind people down. He'd be proud of you. The words hit deeper than Nora expected. I wish I could have met him. He would have liked you. Probably would have fallen a little in love with you too, if I'm honest. He had a thing for stubborn people who refused to quit. There was something in Ethan's tone that made Nora look up sharply. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not professional. Something else. Ethan, I know. I'm your boss. This is inappropriate. Forget I said anything. But Nora couldn't forget it, didn't want to forget it. What if I don't want to forget it? She said quietly. Ethan went very still. Then we have a problem. Because I don't date employees and I don't mix business with personal. And I definitely don't get involved with someone I've treated as badly as I treated you. What if I've forgiven you for that? That doesn't mean I've forgiven myself. They stared at each other across the desk. All the history between them, the penny, the tips, the locket, the hospital, the job offer, hung in the air like smoke. I'm not asking you to forgive yourself, Nora said. I'm asking if you meant what you just said, about Marcus falling in love with stubborn people, because I don't think you were just talking about him. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the careful control was gone. I've been trying not to say it for weeks. You work for me. It's a terrible idea. It crosses every professional line, so fire me. Pay off the rest of my debt immediately, and we'll call it even. I'm not going to fire you. You're the best thing that's happened to this company in years. Then stop hiding behind professionalism and tell me the truth. Ethan stood, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of her chair. Close enough that Nora could see the small scar on his jaw from the car accident, the gray starting at his temples, the exhaustion that came from raising a daughter alone. The truth is, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the night you refused to apologize for that steak. The truth is, you scare me because you see through all my walls. The truth is, I'm falling in love with you, and I have no idea how to do that without ruining everything. Nora stood, bringing them eye to eye. The truth is, I'm falling in love with you too, and I'm terrified. But I didn't survive your worst just to walk away from your best. Ethan kissed her then, carefully, like she might break. Nora kissed him back, tasting coffee and vulnerability, and 3 years of grief finally starting to heal. When they pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. This is going to be complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. HR is going to have a field day. Let them. We'll be professional at work and human everywhere else. Lily's going to ask 1,000,000 questions. Good. She should ask questions. She's 7. Ethan laughed, actually laughed, and it sounded like relief. Okay, we'll try. But if this falls apart, then we'll deal with it like adults. But I don't think it's going to fall apart. She was right. It didn't. The next 6 months were a learning curve for everyone. Nora and Ethan kept their relationship quiet at work, professional and appropriate, saving everything else for after hours. Lily took to Nora like she'd been waiting for someone exactly like her, asking questions about everything and dragging her into elaborate games involving purple horses and imaginary kingdoms. Nora's debt shrank month by month, the payment plan working exactly as she designed it. By the end of the year, she'd paid back $40,000 of the original $62,000. It would take another 3 years to clear completely, but she could see the end now. Could imagine a future where she wasn't defined by what she owed. The culture program expanded across the entire company. Not every department embraced it immediately, but the ones that did saw measurable improvements. Other companies started calling, asking Nora to consult. She was building a reputation as someone who understood the human cost of business and knew how to mitigate it. On the 1-year anniversary of her first day at Celestine, Nora and Ethan went back to the restaurant with Lily. Manuel seated them at table 7 with a knowing smile. Look who's back, our favorite success story. Carlos was still there, now training new servers. He stopped by the table to say hello, grinning at the sight of Ethan and Nora sitting together, clearly together. I called it, Carlos said. First week, I told Jessica there was something weird happening with you two. It was definitely weird, Nora agreed, but it worked out. Yeah, it did. Chef Dominic sent out a special dessert with a note. For the woman who defended my risotto, you're welcome back anytime. Lily colored in her purple horse coloring book, a real published coloring book now, something Nora had found on Amazon and bought immediately. Ethan worked on his phone but kept looking up, checking in, present in a way he hadn't been that first night. When the check came, Ethan pulled out his wallet. Then he paused and looked at Nora. What do you think the tip should be? Something generous. They deserve it. How generous? Nora thought about the penny, about the journey from that single cent to this moment, sitting at table 7 with the man who'd tried to break her and the daughter who'd helped heal him. Everything we can afford, she said. And then a little more. Ethan smiled and wrote a number on the receipt that made the server's eyes go wide when she picked it up. They left the restaurant together, Lily between them holding both their hands, swinging slightly as they walked. The city moved around them, indifferent to their small story of survival and second chances. You know what's funny? Nora said as they waited for Ethan's car. What? I used to think the worst thing that ever happened to me was my ex draining our accounts and leaving me with all that debt. But if he hadn't done that, I never would have taken the job at Celestine. Never would have met you. Never would have found any of this. So you're saying you're grateful to your terrible ex-boyfriend? Absolutely not. He's still garbage, but I'm grateful for where his garbage led me. Ethan squeezed her hand. That's a very healthy way to process trauma. I learned it from you. I'm still learning it from you. Lily tugged on both their hands. Can we get ice cream, please? I want chocolate. They got ice cream. They went home to Ethan's apartment that was slowly becoming their apartment, filled with Lily's drawings and Nora's books and the careful construction of a family that hadn't existed a year ago. Later, after Lily was asleep, Nora stood in the living room looking at the shelf where the locket now lived next to a photo of Marcus. The penny was there too, in a small frame, a reminder of where they'd started. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking? That people are more complicated than I ever gave them credit for. You were cruel and kind, broken and healing, the Viper and just Ethan. Both things were always true. And you were desperate and brave, surviving and building. Both things true. Maybe that's the point. We're all contradictions trying to figure it out. Deep thoughts for 10 p.m. Nora leaned back against him. I've been having a lot of deep thoughts lately. Comes from actually having time to think instead of just surviving. And what's the conclusion of all these deep thoughts? That the things that almost break us are sometimes the things that save us. That cruelty and kindness aren't opposites. They're just different responses to the same pain, and that people can change if they want to badly enough. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, you changed me. You know that, right? We changed each other. That's how this works. They stood there in the quiet apartment, two people who'd found each other in the strangest way possible and decided to build something from the wreckage. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was real and honest and worth the struggle. The next morning, Nora went to work in her office with her name on the door and continued building systems that treated people like people. Ethan went to his meetings and tried to remember that numbers on spreadsheets represented actual human lives. Lily went to school and told everyone about her dad's girlfriend, who was the best and also the bravest person in the whole world. And somewhere in Queens, in a jar on a shelf, a penny sat as evidence that small things could lead to everything if you were stubborn enough to survive them. The debt continued to shrink. The company continued to grow. The family continued to build itself in small moments and big decisions, and the daily choice to keep showing up. 3 years later, when the last payment cleared and Nora was finally completely free of the debt that had defined her for so long, Ethan took her back to Celestine one more time. Table 7 was waiting. This time, when he left the tip, it wasn't a penny and it wasn't thousands of dollars. It was something else entirely. A ring box. Nora opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a simple silver band with a small diamond, beautiful but not ostentatious, real but not trying too hard. I know this is probably the worst proposal location in history, Ethan said, but this is where it started, where I was my worst and you didn't break, where you reminded me what it meant to be human. I wanted to ask you here because this table represents everything I almost destroyed and everything you helped me build back. You're really proposing at your villain origin story location? Is that a no? Nora looked at the ring, at Ethan, at table 7, where she'd been humiliated and tested and ultimately seen for who she really was. She thought about the penny and the locket and the impossible journey from server to director to partner to whatever came next. It's a yes, she said. Obviously, it's a yes. Ethan slid the ring onto her finger with his steady, surgeon-precise hands, and Nora realized she was crying. Happy tears this time, not desperate ones. The difference mattered. The restaurant erupted in applause. Manuel was grinning. Carlos was filming on his phone. Chef Dominic sent out champagne and another note. Finally, took you long enough. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Lily was the flower girl and took her job very seriously, making sure every petal was placed with precision. Emma cried through the entire ceremony. Marcus's photo was in the front row, a presence and an absence both. The reception was at Celestine naturally. Table 7 was reserved for the bride and groom, though they spent most of the night circulating, talking to everyone, making sure people felt seen. When they finally sat down for a quiet moment, exhausted and happy, Nora looked at her husband and smiled. We did it. We did. From a penny to this, that's quite a journey. Best investment I ever made. I was never an investment. I was a person. That's what made you valuable. They kissed, and somewhere in the kitchen, Chef Dominic was probably crying into his risotto. The thought made Nora laugh. Years later, when people asked how they met, Nora would tell them the truth. That she'd been a waitress drowning in debt, and he'd been a billionaire drowning in grief, and they'd pulled each other to shore through a combination of stubbornness, honesty, and the refusal to accept that cruelty was the only option. Some people were inspired by the story. Others were skeptical. A few thought it was too dramatic to be real. Nora didn't care. She knew the truth, that survival looked different for everyone, that change was possible if you wanted it badly enough, that the worst moments of your life could lead to the best ones if you were brave enough to keep walking, and that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who need you most. Not to fix them, nobody could fix another person, but to remind them that they were still human, still capable of more than their worst moments, still worthy of second chances. The penny stayed on the shelf in their home, now in a much nicer apartment in a better neighborhood, surrounded by Lily's Purple Horse collection and family photos, and the careful accumulation of a life built together. Visitors would ask about it sometimes, confused why a single cent was displayed like treasure. Nora would just smile and say, "It's a reminder." Of what? That value isn't about the number, it's about what you do with what you're given. It was a lesson she'd learned from Ethan, even though he'd been trying to teach her the opposite. That people were worth more than their worst moments, more than their mistakes, more than the circumstances that tried to define them. She'd been worth more than a penny from the start. It had just taken both of them a while to see it. And in the end, that was the real story. Not about money or debt or billionaires and waitresses, but about two broken people who decided to be whole together, one small moment at a time, until the collection of moments became a life worth living. The debt was paid. The family was built. The work continued. And every single day, Nora woke up grateful for the man who'd tried to break her and instead taught her how strong she'd been all along.